When I was a kid, there were 3 superheroes that every little kid liked and was generally everyone's favourite: Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. Seeing as I've already covered the Arkham games already, and there are no Superman games out, at least no Superman games that don't make me want to poke my eyes out, it's time to take a look at what is, at least in my opinion, one of the only reasons I'm looking at a PlayStation 5, and it's Sony's Spider-Man game. Spider-Man is now no longer a PlayStation exclusive, sort of, and it is now on PC. So why not go back and take a look at it and see if it's worth checking out or checking out again. What is Marvel's Spider-Man? Well, it's an open world Spider-Man game that, yes, similar say to the Arkham series, is set in its own universe outside of the movies, the comics, or the animated series. But mind you, a lot of people like to think that the Arkham games are a continuation of that animated series. Anyways, Spider-Man has you play as Peter Parker's Spider-Man, who's been in his role for about 8 years or so, and it's safe to say he's in the swing of things.
Why are you the way that you are?
But this is an established Spider-Man who's already gone up against most, if not all, of the Sinister Six. But now there is a new villain on the scene with Mr. Negative, chaos breaks loose, and it's up to Spider-Man to save the day. Now before I jump into it, unlike the Arkham games, I'll try to avoid spoilers, as yeah, a lot of people have played Spider-Man already, but as it is fairly newish and it's just hit PC for some of you who may not have played it, I'll avoid going into deep dive spoilers. Now if for whatever reason you've never played a Spider-Man game like this before, and we've had games like this since the Spider-Man 2 movie tie-in game, which was awesome, so come on. But if you've not played something like this before, these games are the equivalent of a time machine. What I mean by this is you'll get home from work, you'll have a few hours to play before you have to go out maybe. Before you know it, you've got about 4 missed phone calls, you've forgotten to eat anything, and your dogs have shat inside, and this is a good thing. Basically, it's an open world game where you go from one side of New York to the other, do a mission, rinse, and repeat. I mean, when you think of any sandbox game, that's generally what they are anyways, but the world and gameplay of Spider-Man is top notch. Before we get to the traversal, and there's a lot to go into when it comes to that, but the combat is a key component here. Now, it is a blatant copy and paste of the Arkham games. One button is attack, one button is dodge, and there's a combo and special gadgets and instant takedowns. That's not to mean that the combat isn't fluid or buggy, and it does work really damn well for this game, especially for the character of Spider-Man. The flashes and warnings above enemies' attacks make a bit more sense now too, seeing as Spider-Man has the spider sense, and Batman has, you know,
dead parents.
Now, there's the standard combat that you can expect when you're surrounded by enemies or when you're trying to clear out a room, but there's also stealthy moments here and there, and after replaying the Arkham games, it does feel, yes, like a flat copy and paste, but remove Batman and replace it with Spider-Man. But thankfully, this isn't like the Batman entries where there is a clear distinction between Predator and combat moments of gameplay. Like when playing the Batman games, you can easily tell when it's a combat or Predator challenge, but here with Spider-Man, the environment isn't catered to how the gameplay should go. Some combat areas take place on rooftops or in large rooms and areas, and you can basically just jump around and start swinging around the room to sort of reassess the situation or let your web recharge. Spider-Man will also have access to gadgets, yes, a bit like Batman, and while it's a cool mechanic, sure, it doesn't really fit to the game. You'll have your standard web shooters and impact web, which is a bit more stronger, denser web that immediately ties up and can pin enemies to the wall if they're close enough, but there's also electronically fused based web that will stun enemies and is used for some puzzling. There's web bombs, which are literally just green goblin bombs that will explode with web and tie up enemies. There's trip mines, there's drones, and there's more, and while it's cool and it works for the game, it does go to show that it's a copy-paste from Batman.
Goddamn right.
Now, outside of the combat, before we get to traversal, there are some minigames to play too, which feel a little bit like the minigames from the Bioshock series. You'll need to convert the flow of power from one conduit to another, or you'll need to match up sort of like a DNA pattern. Now, these are sort of just fun little side minigames that if you want to 100% the game, you can do them, but you'll need to do these minigames and they can get a bit annoying and tedious to do these. Thankfully though, they're fairly quick and you'll get experience and reward tokens from this, and more from that a little bit later. Graphically, Spider-Man is one of the prettiest games out there. You can see the material or fabric weave in Spider-Man suits, most of the main characters have a great facial capture as well, and there's nothing better than experiencing this world as Spider-Man. As you'd expect, one major aspect they need to nail when it comes to any superhero game is the traversal. Batman and the Batmobile had you gliding around the world, and while that Batmobile didn't sort of sit right for a lot of players, and fair enough, you still felt like Batman. Yes, the Avengers game wasn't a good game, but flying around as Iron Man or calling in Mjolnir to be pulled into the sky as Thor was damn fun, and that's exactly what Spider-Man does right here. Traversal feels fluid and natural for Spider-Man. Playing this with a controller and holding down the right trigger basically activates traversal for Spider-Man, where you'll parkour over items, you'll run up or alongside walls, and obviously swing around. It's a bit like, say, the older Assassin's Creed games when you could hold down the right trigger and it just activate sort of parkour mode for Altair. The traversal also feels smooth as a well-aged whiskey and addictive as popcorn chicken. Now, unlike the Arkham games too, New York is alive and there's always something going on. You'll be making your way to the start of the next mission before getting a call about a high-speed chase, and then from there there's hidden backpacks to find around the city, and then there's radio towers and pigeons to chase down, and just when you're about to start your next mission, bam, someone's been kidnapped, and then you'll need to decide whether to race back to Mary Jane's place to sleep or to stop a robbery. The traversal lines up pretty perfectly too with the world of Spider-Man. There's no awkward stops as Spider-Man accidentally hits a fire escape or bangs into a car or something. Whether you're going down the main city streets of New York or over rooftops and back alleys, there's always something going on. Steam is coming from rooftops and subways to people just eating and drinking on a rooftop. The world feels alive. There's no fake evacuation to get the people out of Gotham City. There's even Easter eggs too, like the Wakandan Embassy, Avengers Tower, Rand Industries. We've also got Doctor Strange's Bleecker Street location and more. Obviously, being a superhero game too, there is a fuck ton of costumes to choose from. You've got your standard style suit, you've got the advanced suit which was created for this game, which is actually kind of cool. There's also MCU style suits, Tobey Maguire's suit, which still looks great, the original first Andrew Garfield suit, Scarlet Spider, Spider-Man Noir. Chances are your favourite Spider-Man suit is in this game. Now, depending on what suit you pick too, it'll not only change the suit in the game, but it will also change the suit in the cutscenes, which is a big thing for me and I don't know why. Depending on what suit you pick, the eyes will still adjust like the standard suits still adjust, if that makes sense. For example, if you pick the MCU Spider-Man suit, the eyes will move just like they do in the films, but if you pick a suit that, say, doesn't have this ability, like, say, the Scarlet Spider suit, Tobey Maguire's suit, or maybe the 2099 Spider-Man suit, they won't move, if that makes sense. Now, just like you can probably guess too, there is a leveling up system, and with the leveling up system, you'll get ability tokens, new suit perks, new suits to unlock and wear, but also some passive abilities too, like being able to traverse the city faster with your web swinging. Now, you'll unlock ability tokens just by leveling up, but as I just mentioned, you'll unlock suits. But you'll need to further unlock them by using tokens that you get from doing small side missions. Each suit will have a different token requirement, like crime, or landmark, or backpack, or research. So if you want to run around, say, as the 2099 Spider-Man, you'll need to have the relevant tokens to purchase that suit once you've unlocked that suit, if that makes sense. Then once you purchase the suit and you've actually unlocked it and you can wear it and run around in it, you'll have other special abilities which can be changed out and used with different suits. It's a bit of a mindfuck, but let me explain. For example, the Civil War MCU Stark suit has the Spider Bro, which is the little drone that comes out of him and it will electrocute nearby enemies. Where the Spider-Man Noir suit will turn the screen black and white and enemies aren't alerted when you attack other goons. But if you want to, say, use the Spider-Man Noir suit ability, like turning the screen black and white, but you still want to run around as the MCU suit, you can swap the abilities in the suits however you want.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
But, well, this is the thing you might already know about the game, but seeing as Spider-Man came out in 2017, how is it now on PC? Well, it's the same as the 2017 game, but it's got some improved graphics, it's got a new fucking face for Peter Parker, which I'm not a fan of, and well, now you don't need a PlayStation to play Spider-Man, which I'm personally a fan of. But on PC, there were some issues, to say the least. I found the game randomly froze to load in environments, and while I was in the middle of swinging in the city. Some character models look great, while others look But yeah, look, it's a 2017 game, but it's also had a bit of a graphical rehaul. If you can put time into changing Peter Parker's face, then surely you can put time into upgrading some other areas.
For dementia, Pete. I'm crushing him.
Well, the important thing is having fun.
I see your lips moving, but I can't make out your words. I'm deaf!
Also, looking into the world, I also found that nearby buildings had poor textures until I got close to them, and I was running this on high graphics. Speaking of graphics, when going into Nvidia, it recommended running it on ultra high with ray tracing turned on because, well, with the current rig I have and the recommended settings, it said I could do it. But when I was running the game with those settings, it was chugging slower than sculling a bottle of maple syrup.
See, there you have it. You're doing it all wrong. You gotta open your throat, relax your jaw. Don't forget to cup the balls.
So I had to go into the game and into the settings and slowly turn things off until I found a good mix. Now, this is a personal gripe that I have with the game itself, rather than a fault with the game, and it's the world in which, say, Spider-Man takes place. There's references to Avengers, Doctor Strange, Daredevil, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, but we don't see them in the game. Nor are there any real references besides small building Easter eggs. Now, some might say this might be because the MCU has now made that everything must take place together and there's no standalone stuff anymore, and yeah, I can see that. But Spider-Man takes place in New York. It's a shared city where the Avengers and Doctor Strange and even more grounded local heroes like Daredevil are located in, and we have moments in the game, and they're fairly big moments, and it could have been cool to see other heroes pop in and try to localize the damage or help out in some way. And what's even a bit more of a kicker is, they have landmarks in the city, but we just don't see or really hear from them. Some large events occur in the game, and while we hear that the Avengers are on the West Coast, that's not stopping us from seeing Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Doctor Strange, or anyone popping in to help. We've had these characters pop in the original PlayStation 1 Spider-Man games, and even there's a Bagman Fantastic Four Spider-Man suit in this game. Hell, at one point there was this rad Halloween party at a university, but it appears that this university only know and loves Spider-Man. There are people running around as the Vulture and Rhino and Mysterio, but you know, we have the Avengers and Doctor Strange in this gamed world, yet no one at this Halloween party wants to dress up as them. But that's the personal gripe I had with the game. There's also some small missions here and there where you play as Mary Jane, and they act as little stealth missions. Now obviously there's no combat and it's just maneuvering around enemies trying not to be seen, and sure, they break up the gameplay a little bit and provide something different, but they kinda just felt out of place in some instances. I think the only moment where I went, oh cool, was a reference to Alchemex, and that's because I'm a nerd. But if you've not played Spider-Man for whatever reason, then yeah, I highly recommend it. While a lot of its combat and gameplay is ripped straight out of Rocksteady's Arkham games, the traversal is something that never fails to entertain and proves that playing as a superhero in an open world Manhattan never goes out of style. If only we got an Avengers game like this. The PC version of the game comes with all 3 DLC expansions, which gives you more story and more costumes, but this game retails at $100 on Steam for a 5-year-old game, so take that in mind. But if you want more of an excuse to swing around the city if you needed one, Spider-Man is now available on PC, and yeah, it's been on the PlayStation for quite some time.